Warning. Tongue and Geek contains heavy spoilers. If you haven't read, watched, or played the content being reviewed this episode, know that we will definitely spoil major plot points. Also, this show isn't for kids. We use words like and and it would take too much time and effort to edit them all out. Please don't tell our moms. Lovely listeners, and welcome to Tongue and Geek, where two more white guys on the internet give their unsolicited opinions on all things geeky. I'm Isaac.
I'm Tyler.
And today
I'm also Tyler.
Yes, we've got a second Tyler here. He's multiplying. So we've got our good friend, also Tyler here. We're going to refer to him as T2. For the sake of fairness, I'm going to refer to our original Tyler as T3. There isn't a T1.
Isaac got me wet. That's why I'm multiplying. Yes. And there's another Tyler here.
That's a reference to Gremlins, which is T3's favorite film. T2, what's your favorite film?
Of all time?
Yeah.
Almost Famous.
Okay. We're gonna
Almost Famous, just like this podcast.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sure. With our one consecutive viewer, I think we have right now at the moment.
That's somebody. You gotta start somewhere.
But anyway, today we're reviewing Masters of the Universe Revelation, a Netflix animated series created by Kevin Smith, animated by Powerhouse Animation Studios, and the spiritual sequel to the 1980s series He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. T3... Would you want to give us... God, this is going to be so confusing. Tyler Original, would you like to give us some background on this one?
All right, classic recipe Tyler.
Yeah.
Yes, I will give some brief background. He-Man and the Masters of the Universe was originally an 80s property. It started as a toy line / mini comic back in the early 80s, and like every cartoon from that era, it was basically just made to sell the toys.
And it worked.
It worked. It's the original Masters of the Universe toy line is one of like the most popular, best-selling, beloved toy lines of all time. The cartoon is one of the few from the 80s that has really stuck around in the popular consciousness of fandom.
The fuck you talking about? They remake like an 80s cartoon every year nowadays.
I know, but like when you think of 80s cartoons, you think Transformers, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, G.I. Joe, Thundercats, and He-Man, basically, as like
was
top
DuckTales
5.
80s or was DuckTales early 90s?
DuckTales was late 80s. But with Revelations, what was cool about it is that Kevin Smith billed it as, it's not like a reinvention of the formula. It's not like them like blowing up the mythology to like do something like new and edgy and cool and different. They approached it as a continuation of the original 80s cartoon, just a little bit more grown up, a little bit more mature, but they really wanted to retain the essence of the characters, the essence of the world, and give something back to the fans with just a bit more fanfare and maturity to it. I guess we'll probably get into the insane, stupid backlash that this received when it came out at some point.
Boy, yeah, we will.
But
I was holding my tongue when you said he billed it as like just a continuation, and it's totally the same as the old show, because that's not what I got in the comments at all.
Well, speaking as I can't say I'm a huge mega fanboy, but I've always liked He-Man. I've always appreciated the world and the toys. I can say that it's a very loving continuation of the story. And I'm going to speak for T2 here and say that he also enjoyed it.
Well, let
T2
him speak for himself.
I am. I'm going to segue to him.
Diet Tyler, what's your thoughts?
Diet Tyler, what's your thoughts?
Are you calling me Diet Tyler because I'm diabetic?
I no, but that's a hilarious connection. So yes, now I will for the rest of the episode.
Low blood sugar Tyler. What's your history with He-Man and Masters of the Universe?
All right, I was introduced to Masters of the Universe from the early 2000s cartoon.
Oh yeah,
not the 80s cartoon. Thought it was fantastic. I wish I had collected the toys from the early 2000s cartoon when I was a kid. Weirdly enough, the only toys I had from that were the McDonald's toys. Pretty sure it was McDonald's, but it was some fast food restaurant like kids meal toy, and I'm almost positive it was McDonald's. And the one that always sticks out is a Beast Man. And I just thought like, man, this looks really cool. I was introduced through that and I really, really enjoyed it. As I got a little bit older, I went back and discovered the 80s cartoon. I also remember saying something about it. It was at a holiday, Christmas time. I have cousins who, were both kids in the 80s, and I said something about He-Man, and he was like, He-Man, what do you know about He-Man? He was like, that was my generation's cartoon. Went back. I really love the 80s cartoon as well. When this was announced, I was like over the moon excited. It's one of my favorite franchises ever. I think that Kevin Smith knocked it out of the park.
Okay, here's my background with He-Man. And so I turn my head to the sun, I get That meme video is about the only thing I knew about He-Man before watching this series. I have maybe watched a single episode of the original 80s cartoon, seen memes plastered all over the internet, but I knew nothing about He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, the original 80s series. So when you two recommended this to me, I was like, all right, I'll see what it's like. I'm not going to know anything going on, but sure. Let me just dive in. But I enjoyed it. I think it was a cool series, sort of mini-series, even like as a standalone. Like there's a lot of lore that I get that I didn't understand, and I didn't really know these characters. There's like a bunch of background characters that I'm sure fans looked at and were like, oh man, it's the fist guy or whatever. But like, I was just like, okay.
His name is Fisto, by the way.
Yeah, Fisto. They made a fisting joke with him. So like, I was like,
yeah.
I was like, okay, cool. But, I enjoyed it overall. I thought it's a fun series, and we'll get into why. Where should we start with this one?
That's a good question.
I want to say that makes me very happy to hear that. Tyler and I both had, decent backgrounds with this series, this franchise, and, you had no background with it at all, and you still really enjoyed it. I think that speaks to how well done it is.
It's a good series. It's great animation. I love Powerhouse. Yeah. They also did, we'll get into this with the recommendations, but they also did the Castlevania series that's on Netflix, and like, they're great at this like sort of new age anime-inspired Western animation for like more mature cartoons. Like, they're great at this stuff.
Yeah, there's action here that's like DBZ level of like badass.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, sure. That's a good comparison.
It's fun.
I mean, I guess, like, just to get it rolling, we can just recap the general story.
Let's jump into that first episode, because it really sets up what the rest of the series is going to be like. First episode, we get into, like, Skeletor trying to sneak into Castle Grayskull, which I guess was sort of the running theme from what the old series was. Like, he was trying to take over Castle Grayskull and get the secrets or whatever. And he seems like he finally sort of succeeded here, but He-Man managed to stop him by breaking apart his Sword of Power, and he and Skeletor died in the ensuing explosion. So right out the gate, episode 1, our main protagonist and main antagonist are dead by the end of the first episode. That as a new fan, that was very wild and interesting to me. And I had this moment where I was like, oh, that's kind of ballsy, because I'm sure some people aren't going to like that. And looking into the reviews for this, lots of people didn't like that.
They did not. They also kill Mossman, who in this one was voiced by Alan Oppenheimer, who voiced Skeletor in the original 80s cartoon.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, the voice cast here is fucking stacked.
It's Mark Hamill, Skeletor, killing it.
There is not a weak point.
He was almost too good as Skeletor.
And then I want to get into this. So people were just saying like, it's just the same voice he did in the Batman cartoon. And it's like similar, but still, it works. It works perfectly for this.
It's like one of the most iconic voices in animation. It could come out of a fucking Teletubby and I would fucking love it.
Exactly.
And like, yeah, you can kind of hear Joker in his Skeletor, but Skeletor is so beloved because he's such a ridiculous ass. Like, if you watch that original cartoon, he's such an asshole. He's so silly. He's so over the top. Mm-hmm. They really lean into that with Mark Hamill's performance. He's having a ball.
And like, you don't want him to do just a rip-off of Alan Oppenheimer's, Skeletor voice. Mm-hmm. Like, that's not what you want. Mark Hamill took it. He made it his own. and it works.
Yeah, he runs the gamut between being like silly and goofy and funny, but also menacing when he needs to be. He really went for it. And
this first episode also does a great job of establishing these characters, because like I said, I went in with I knew what the toys looked like, but I had no ideas like what these actual characters were like. We get Skeletor, who, like you all said, is just like a big asshole whose whole deal is he's cartoonishly evil, and he wants the power! Power! You have the Sorceress, who is like the serious guardian of Castle Grayskull or whatever. I really liked Prince Adam / He-Man. He was sort of like a Luke Skywalker light here. I thought he like had that sort of like generic hero, but in a way that's fun and charming, not boring.
Yeah, that's what I mean by like Kevin Smith and the creative team wanting to like honor and continue what the original show was by also like maturing it a little. Because if you're familiar at all with the 80s show and you see these characters, they feel like what they were back then.
Yes.
You know, because even though it's an 80s cartoon, there really isn't much strong continuity in those old cartoons. Like there is still some like lore and character development that does happen.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with like Tila and King Randor and He-Man and his mother and all that. Where we picked them up here, it's exactly where we left them all off. I can understand newcomers and fans alike being turned off by how quickly things develop in this first episode of killing off Adam and He-Man, killing off Skeletor, and then focusing on the side characters. But if you come in with the expectation of watching a continuation of the 80s cartoon, I think you'll realize just how like lovingly recreated all the characters were. He-Man and Adam, he's such a good boy. You know, he's like the goodest. He's the goodest boy. You know, you see this big buffed out dude in a furry loincloth and a big chest piece, and you think he'd be like a dopey, hyper, you know, masculine, beat him up kind of guy.
Yeah.
But that's not who he is. Adam is just a decent dude who wants to take the path of least resistance. Even though this was part of the censorship back then in the 80s with 80s cartoons, like he never really used his sword as a weapon, of course, you know, because censors were like crazy back then. But in a way that added to his character in that, like, he only wants to use the power when he feels it absolutely necessary.
Yeah, until he fucking stabs Skeletor here, and then Skeletor's like, you finally use that sword how you're supposed to, boy!
Yes, they managed to mature up the story and the mythos in a way that doesn't feel grim, dark, or edgy for the sake of it.
Well, I think there are maybe moments in this where I was thinking, okay, this was a cartoon targeted towards children to sell toys, and they have taken it into much, much more mature themes than I was expecting. And for the most part, I enjoyed it, but there were moments where I was definitely like, this is a bit edgy. We'll get to it later, but Orko, they fucking made the joke character into like this depressed little guy who, like, he's never worth anything to anyone, and then he fucking dies in hell. Like,
it's in character, though. It's in character. That's what makes it hilarious.
Okay, I don't know anything, but it's like,
I had really strong Orko opinions.
Okay.
Like, in the original, I hated him. He was one of the most annoying characters in any kind of 80s franchise to me. He was like the annoying little brother of the Masters of the Universe cast. When I watched the episode where Orko dies, I teared up. I got so emotional. It made me absolutely love this character so much. They did such a good job at making Orko this like super admirable hero. And like you got to see why he is the way he is. And it took a character that I thought was stupid and I hated, and he became one of my favorite characters in this entire series.
I liked it. I thought it was cool, but like, there are definitely moments in here where I had to stop and be like, is this what the 80s show was like? Because if it is, I'm going fucking back. Because like, it was just wild to me how dark they were willing to go. Because episode 1, protagonist and antagonist, dead, killed, immediately sets this precedent of like, oh, nobody's safe. Like, we might kill anyone in this series, and like, ooh, okay, that's where we're going. Cool.
And I think one of the beautiful things about this series that people really complained about, they were like, it's not like the 80s cartoon at all. And it's like, do you really want like the 80s cartoon setup? Would you have liked if this series had some kind of like moral lesson it taught you? And at the end, Prince Adam came out and he was like, this is why it's important to check on your friends to make sure they're okay and they're not upset with you. Like, that doesn't work in 2021 when this came out.
Well, here's
like,
the thing. This series does have a moral message. It's just a much more mature one to
Yeah,
it
doesn't cross
modern
the line.
audience.
well, in the 80s, they straight up, there was a moral message, and at the end,
ESAs, basically.
Yeah. So, yeah, episode 1, out the gate. And protagonist, antagonist dead, and we realize that this is actually a series following Tila, the female man. What's the term? It's not a man of war.
Man at arms.
Man at arms, who was like the adoptive daughter of the original Man at Arms, and she finds out, I guess for the first time, she never knew that He-Man and Prince Adam were the same person. She finds out that they are the same person as he's dying. And then she's like, fuck this shit. I'm out because I was lied to for years by all of my friends. And now the guy who I guess it's implied she was in love with is dead. So she just leaves the royal palace and becomes sort of her own little bounty hunter.
Yeah, and cue a million incelish man babies raging that the girl takes the spotlight.
It's not called Tila and the Masters of the Universe. Anyone who commented that is a fucking idiot.
Mm-hmm.
They took Tila, like a secondary character that people were like, oh, it's Tila, and made her the most badass character in this entire series. She's awesome.
I was going to say, she's got a very classic arc. It's one that I can understand people being upset with because it does rely on the very overused liar revealed trope, but her arc is a classic of losing hope and regaining it and then losing it again and like struggling to hold on to hope. Because throughout this whole series, she's dealing with her own cynicism, with her own like loss of identity in the face of my best friend held this huge part of his life away from me, and everything I thought I knew was wrong, but I have to have something to believe in. So it's very it's not like super innovative, especially for nowadays, but like it is a very classic sort of hero's journey to go through.
Tila is, I would say, the third main character of the original series after He-Man and Skeletor. And she's one of the characters that actually gets like a decent amount of backstory.
Mm-hmm.
We learn in the old one who her mother is, the sorceress, and how Man-at-Arms adopted her and her kind of journey of discovering who she is. It's not particularly nuanced or deep because we're talking about 80s cartoon here. But at the same time, going back and like watching those episodes, 40 years old at this point, and seeing the attempt at like giving these characters humanity and dimension is really cool. In the cartoon, only Sorceress, Cringer, Man-at-Arms, and
Orko
know that Adam is He-Man. Oh wait, and his mom too, not his dad.
Yeah,
she never tells him, and she's like, "Our son is dead."
And the dynamic between Adam and Tila is friendly and antagonistic and fun and maybe a little romantic. Picking up with her finding out that, oh my god, you've been He-Man this entire time, and like you guys knew, what the fuck? Like I've been on all these adventures with you, saving Eternia from Skeletor and his assholes for years. You don't tell me like that. I mean, she's kind of you got to be kind of dumb when He-Man and Adam are never in the same room together. But still,
He-Man is like a 7-foot-tall, massive muscle. He's a pure beefcake. Adam's this scrawny little twig of a boy.
Well, that's one of the few redesigns they did in Revelation. Adam is exactly the same looking as He-Man in the old one, just with like a pink tunic.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's the exact same character model. Exact same character model with the pink tunic.
So in the old series, he's also a huge beefy boy. He just takes his shirt off.
Yes, he just takes his shirt off.
Because I mean, that way, it's one less toy model you have to make.
Exactly.
It's just a repaint.
It's a Clark Kent situation. Then it's like modest Prince Adam would never be so indecent as to just wear a fur loincloth and run around.
I mean, what's like Cringer and Battle Cat?
Mhm.
Like they never put together the one green with red striped tiger in the entire world is also a Battle Cat, which I guess, because Cringer is very much as his name implies, super scared and just anxious. And then Battle Cat is this awesome, badass, animal. But still, there are no other green animals with red stripes at all. Yeah. So,
yeah, they put the Superman universe to shame with their what? Who is He-Man? Who is Battle Cat?
That's good to know, because I didn't know that they were basically the same size. Because in this series, there's a huge difference. Prince Adam's a little twig boy, and then He-Man's this muscle boy macho. Fuck, can we take a moment? I am in love with the designs in this series.
Oh yeah, it's pure just
it's more
character model porn.
So good. Everyone's a fucking beefcake. The dudes, the girls, everyone's just beefy. Like, even before Evil Lynn gets the power towards the end of the series, like, there's points where she's, like, sleeveless and she's just fucking toned. And it's like, muscle MILF, give me that shit.
Goth sorceress Evil Lynn is waifu. I'm just gonna put that out here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would wife that up in a heartbeat.
Everybody's got washboard abs, and I'm fucking loving it. It's so
and we're bearing the lead here, but when she got the power, when Evil Lynn got the power and she got even beefier, I'm like, I still would.
Hell yeah. No, I would more. That's another stupid misogynist criticism that I saw a bunch of, is like,
it was everywhere.
Muscly women, and it's like, you think men are the only ones who can work out? What the fuck is wrong with you?
We only want to see mostly naked men with muscles in our cartoon reboot. What's this terrible shit of seeing mostly naked muscular women?
Give me back my homoerotic fantasy from my childhood.
I mean, you gotta call it like you see it,
But anyway, yeah, Tila leaves. She goes off and becomes a bounty hunter with her friend. What's her friend's name? I forget.
What? Oh, the new character.
Yeah,
she is new.
Andra.
Yeah,
she's fun. She's a fun, sort of optimistic character who is learning pieces about Tila's life that she doesn't really want to talk about anymore. She helps Tila sort of re-find her, faith in people and everything, and, accept her destiny as a hero again. They come into contact with Evil Lynn, who I guess was like a secondary villain in the original series. Evil Lynn's basically like, okay, He-Man and Skeletor destroyed all magic in the universe, and the universe is dying now, so we've got to go get the magic back by going to heaven and hell to reforge the Sword of Power. Which is just fucking wild out the gate. This whole weird journey they're on of, we're gonna go to heaven and hell, and, that's just, I was not expecting us to go into the lore of this universe's afterlife in episode 3 or so.
Yeah, it hits the ground running and never really stops, which is both one of its biggest strengths and weaknesses, I think. I think the pacing and story development can be a little too much at times.
And it can be a turnoff for people that aren't Isaac. If you aren't familiar with this universe, you're kind of like, all right, this is moving at 1,000 miles an hour. I kind of want some setup, so I kind of know what's going on.
Yeah.
It was a lot to take in, but I was just sort of on board with this whole wild ass ride of okay, fuck, we're going to heaven and hell. Cool. It's just wild. Subternia and Preternia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Both really cool, awesome, fun places to visit.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing
we
all
got
the
Scareglow.
Fucking.
Okay.
I love Scareglow so much.
Who the fuck is Scareglow? Is he the devil?
See, that's the thing.
Is he
I don't know.
Dad? Who is he?
I think he's the devil mirror version of Skeletor.
That's kind of the impression I get too. Because he carries a scythe too. So he's got, big Grim Reaper vibes there.
Because he showed up, you're not. I thought they had run into Skeletor in hell. That's what I thought had happened. And I was like, wait, no, this is a different character.
In one of the mini comics, he refers to himself as the ghost of Skeletor.
Yeah. It's not really explained what he is precisely and where he comes from. He's just kind of a thing.
He's never featured in the original cartoon. He's just a toy.
He was just a toy.
Oh, wow.
He was in the last series of the original toy line that came out in 87, but he's never featured in the original cartoon.
That's fucking wild.
It's a super badass toy, too. And
Oh, yeah, that's awesome.
and it glows in the dark. It looks so cool. The only background we have is from that mini comic that came with him. But he's still super iconic in the He-Man world just because the toy was really cool.
That's another thing is that, like, I don't understand anybody complaining, because there were some complaints that I saw about people being like, the new designs are stupid and silly. And it's like, did you fucking look at the original designs? Like,
Yeah.
I honestly don't see how. Yeah, I honestly don't see how anybody can have a problem with the designs because they're just more refined versions of the old designs. Like,
exactly.
The only one that they really change up is Tilo by like cutting her hair and giving her some armor. That's it.
Like there was a lot of if anything, Tila is like more subdued now. Like she's like her big poofy 80s hair is gone now. There were a lot.
They're just mad. They're just mad because they don't want to fap off to her as much as they did back in the 80s.
Their loss. I like me some strong women. But I saw a lot of people complaining that like Skeletor's muscle form was stupid, like his like Skelegod or whatever he called himself.
Yeah, Skelegod was awesome.
It was badass. I was like, oh,
damn,
like
he's
Skeletor but more. It's awesome.
So we saw the Skelegod toy in stores before this series was actually out. Because I was on vacation and I remember like I sent Tyler a Snapchat of Skelegod and I was like, oh my God, we don't know what this is, but here it is. Because the series was going to come out. It came out the day I got back from vacation. So it's, middle of the week. And then I binged the entire series the night I got back from vacation. So I stayed up till like 4:30 that morning to watch it. Well, I saw that and I was like, all right, well, this has got to be a big plot point. This looks really badass. So I knew nothing about it, just saw the toy and was like, this kicks ass. So I think the design is incredible.
It's so fun.
That's what makes it so worthwhile is because these 10 episodes, they take all of the like premise of the old cartoon that was never fulfilled and throw it at you. What if Skeletor finally gets the power? What would that be like, What if Evelyn finally decides to go off for herself and succeeds to become her own villain? We finally get that, Like, what is the actual final culmination of the He-Man and Skeletor rivalry gonna look like?
It does have, and this is gonna sound like an insult, but it's not. It does have that sort of fanfic feel to it, where it feels like a lot of fans wanting to fill in the gaps that were left in the series. Not in the sense of like, oh, it's trashy, but in the sense, because I've talked a lot, I love fanfic in general, just as a concept. But it does have this feeling of like it was made by people deeply invested in these characters, in this world, in this lore, and wanting to see how it all comes together. Because I don't know how the actual original 80s series ended, but I'm assuming there wasn't like a big climactic finale.
Yeah, cartoons back then, they didn't have that kind of nuance in storytelling. Mm-hmm. They were all very, very, very episodic. So there isn't a grand finale of He-Man. Mm-hmm. And this is what that's supposed to act like, is the grand finale.
Yeah, which is very interesting as a newcomer to just come in and see it from, like, the first time. Like, it was very wild, because, like, the first episode, I'm like, okay, I kind of get this sort of, I guess, is what the show's like. And then it's like, oh, they're dead. Okay, here's what we're going with. Like there was a lot that threw me off with this series. I'm shocked, honestly, that it managed to keep a TV PG rating because there's a lot of death, there's a lot of violence. Multiple people get stabbed and blood is shown in this series. There's sexual themes.
Yeah, that's what really threw me through the loop. Like, I don't the violence. The violence is there, but I don't think it's gratuitous or overly gory.
It's more than TVPG, though.
It's more than if the original cartoon is TVG, this is PG-13.
Yeah,
this is like a Marvel movie level violent. I would say. Yeah, the
Skeletor bones.
The confirmation of sexual activity. Really, I was just like, oh my god!
Skeletor bones Evelyn.
Skeletor fuck! Yes. Every 30 to 40 something nerds like
owned it.
Creepy fixation. I wonder if Skeletor bangs Evelyn was confirmed.
Yeah, they were just sitting there like they called up their buddies like, "Hey Todd, remember when we used to watch He-Man? I told you they were banging. They're banging."
You ever wonder what it would be like to kiss Skeletor on the mouth? Well,
Dry.
Dry and hard.
We were talking about, character design, and like when they get to Preternia, seeing King Grayskull, what a beast of a character. Like, can we just talk about how badass they made that character for the brief period he's in there?
Hell yeah. Preternia feels like Valhalla, like this like warrior king heaven where the great warriors of old end up. And like King Grayskull is just this fucking awesome, like badass hero warrior king who's just like running around, having fun on the hunt, offering his sage advice to the newcomers and telling stories around a campfire. Like, I love the whole Preternia scene.
This looks so cool.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and that's that is not. We did not have him in the '80s cartoon, correct?
Nope.
He was introduced in the 2000s cartoon, but he looked a lot different than he does in Revelation. In Revelation, he looks way cooler.
Yeah, the champions of Preternia. I think that's what all those the dead previous holders of the power are called.
I love that one of them's name is just Hero.
Hero, yeah. Hero. That's what's so fun about this universe is like it's this mishmash of like all kinds of various aspects of like fantasy and swords and sandals and techno barbarian. Like there's magic and there's dinosaurs and there's creatures and there's buff men and buff women and swords, and
they never take themselves too seriously. Even with this series adding all of like the more serious character drama and like backstories and stuff, there's never a moment where they're like, you have to take this so seriously because again, this is a little goblin wizard who flies around and shoots magic and makes bubbles around things.
Yeah.
Like, it's so
Norco.
Such a fun little wild weird world.
What I like is that it's kind of like Star Wars in that they have the power, which is basically the Force. And in the old cartoon, you never really get a concrete answer of what the power is and what its relation with Castle Grayskull is. All you know in the old one is that Castle Grayskull needs to be protected from the forces of Skeletor, and Sorceress guards it. Mm-hmm. But here we finally learn that the power is like the nexus of all creation. Eternia is like the center of the universe.
Like the beating heart of the universe, yeah.
I
And
never thought about, like what, when you're watching it when you're younger, like, oh, what is the power? It's just like, oh, I have the power. And then he turns, Adam turns into He-Man. I never read into it, when I was younger.
I will say, I wish they had done this a bit more, because in the first episode, there was this fantastically campy, like, transformation sequence that was basically Sailor Moon for boys.
Yeah, it's basically Sailor Moon for boys.
And they don't really do it anymore after that. Like, I really wish there was a transformation sequence in each one, like, every time it happened. But, like, that first one just really got me, where it was like, okay, we're doing Sailor Moon, great.
Yeah, he gets all sparkly and colorful and translucent. You see you see a good glimpse of taut ass cheek as his loincloth forms around him. Yeah. What I like about the power in this is how much of an overt, like, good versus evil, light versus dark story it is. As the millions of stories have been told about good versus evil and light versus dark, I just, for some reason, something about this show, the way it contextualizes it with the old show, it's almost like the most primal version of what the struggle of good and evil is. It's like Eternia being the center of the universe and like the power being like this like linchpin of like creation. It sort of like paints He-Man and the Masters of the Universe and Skeletor and his people as like hero and villain for like all the universe, like they are the base hero. They are what He-Man is like, what heroes all stem from. Skeletor is what villains all stem from. And like, they're like destined to do battle, and I'm waxing philosophical and rambling, but it's a really fun dynamic, I think, that they actually made fresh, even though we've seen it 1,000,001 times.
What I like about the power here is, unlike other good versus evil stories, because this is a very classic good versus evil source story, the power itself doesn't seem to be good or evil. Like, they keep talking about by the power of Grayskull, and, Grayskull's one of the heroes, but the power itself isn't really his. It was more like he was the first to channel it. But anybody can get access to the power. Skeletor gets access to the power. Evelyn gets access to the power. And Evelyn's whole arc in the second half of this series is realizing that, like, there's no point to the power. It's just this absence, empty, mindless force in a chaotic universe with no, like, sense of reason or rhyme. She literally has a vision of, I guess, the eagle, which I had to do some Googling. The eagle Zoar?
Zoar.
And it's like God or the goddess or whatever. She has a vision of this goddess being killed at the beginning of time, and her realizing that, like, there's no point to anything. Like, we're in a godless, meaningless universe. The power is just this force that has no purpose behind it. What we get to see with the power in this series is it's not about what the power itself is. Like, it doesn't matter what the power itself is. It's how it's utilized. Because for Prince Adam He-Man, like, it's about using the power only when necessary to protect others. For Skeletor, it's this obsessive desire to become stronger than He-Man. For Evelyn, it's this desire to wipe everything out, to start over, to end everything because there's no point in it. The power itself can be whatever it means to its user, and that's where I think it has its, like, narrative potential, is that it's not like the light or dark side of the force, it's just the power.
It's man's hubris and self-interested desires that corrupt the power. The power doesn't corrupt you, you corrupt the power.
It's literally the concept of power.
Oh, yeah. And that's why, aside from how fucking badass it is, that's why I absolutely love the part in part 2 where Adam's like, the sword was just a conduit. I've always had this within me. And then he calls it without a sword, and he becomes He-Man Man.
Yeah.
It's this
Hulk Man.
This hulked out rage version of He-Man who, without the buffer of the sword and all that, like,
he's just pure power.
He becomes what he's afraid of, just the pure power that can kill and cause damage and hurt. You could call it cheesy, but, like, I absolutely love how it's just like, love and connection and, like, acknowledgement from his father that, like, talks him off the ledge.
This series is heavy-handed at times, but it's done in a way that's well-intentioned, and even if you roll your eyes at it at moments, it never undercuts the message being presented. Like, it kind of it's a little ham-fisted, but, like, it works.
But it's another testament to how much they paid attention to the old cartoon. Because the whole dynamic between King Randor and Adam was that, oh, Adam, you're lazy and you're flighty and you're wishy-washy and you're not responsible. Randor finally, like, showing himself to his son and, like, showing him that he loves him and that he's here for him. And that being the catalyst of depowering He-Man Man, off the ledge. It's another good payoff from the old show that has more nuance than you would expect.
I think with the old show, you automatically assume the power is a positive, good force, because he calls upon the power to become He-Man. So you assume this is this, like, magical good thing that comes down. Yeah. And in this, we are taught that it's a neutral force. It's neither good nor evil. And I thought that was really interesting because, we spent the past 40 years thinking, when he says, I have the power, there's some kind of, like, magical, good, godlike figure up there who's shooting him with this good energy to turn him into He-Man. And then we find out in this that is not at all what is happening. It's a completely neutral force that is just like the universe, and it's the force that that makes the universe go round.
God is dead. The primal snake killed her. The primal snake killed the goat and then her. I don't know what that vision meant, by the way. I don't know if that was some obscure lore that I wasn't catching, what the snake or the goat were supposed to represent, but, like,
I couldn't tell you either. I'm not. It doesn't ring any bells from as much as I like He-Man, I can't sit here and lie that I've seen every single episode of the old show because I haven't. But no, it's not something that rings a bell off the top of my head.
Just the primordial goat and snake and Zoar, the primordial eagle.
I guess maybe it's just supposed to like represent like the, I don't know, like the primal aspect of like life and creation and all that.
Like, I got the sense that, like, the vision at the end, because we see that vision a few times. The final one, when we finally see, like, Zoar being resurrected from the pool or whatever, I got the sense that the idea was that Zoar lives in all things, in all of creation now. The power is life and the universe itself. Like, that sort of seems to be what they were pushing for. But, like, as far as what those individual creatures were supposed to represent went way over my head. Snake the devil.
I'll have to watch it again to come up with my theory on that. I also like how the death of Adam and Skeletor recontextualized the side characters.
Mm-hmm.
Like, their entire existence revolves around, you know, the battle between He-Man and Skeletor. What do the henchmen do when Skeletor's not around? You know, they start techno-cults. They...
Oh, my God.
The Triclops guy.
We have got to talk about Motherboard.
I fucking love Triclops. He's my favorite henchman in the entire show. And the fact that, like, he became a techno cult leader for Motherboard is just, it's chef's kiss. It's so funny and so on brand.
And then I'm sure we'll get to it later, but holy shit, the cliffhanger they leave you with for the entire series, like at the end of part 2 involving Motherboard.
Yeah.
I leapt out of my seat.
Yeah, I should have bricked.
My jaw dropped as it's happening, and I was like, "There's no way. There's no way. What? And just like leapt up. Oh God.
Is this series ongoing or is it done?
We haven't got confirmation of season 2, so I'm sad that I think this is the only thing we're gonna get. But what I loved about the Triclops Motherboard thing is you think it's just like a cool sort of side quest in the show, just to, you know, give the fans some, you know, Triclops love because he's one of the more beloved characters.
Yeah, just show how everything's changed.
And it doesn't pay off in and of itself until like the end credit stinger, where we see that Motherboard was real.
Was he voiced by Henry Rollins?
Yeah, that was Henry Rollins. Yeah,
another perfect casting.
Yes. Motherboard is real, and it's the fucking Horde from She-Ra and the Princesses of Power.
It's
Hordak, and oh my God.
And as somebody who had just recently seen the reboot of She-Ra and the Princesses of Power on Netflix, getting a tease for that in this so soon after that, I was just like, please do season 2, please.
Unfortunately, I think there's like sort of ownership problems there, because I don't know who owns, because DreamWorks has the rights to She-Ra.
Yeah, I think I read that they wanted to try and get Adam and He-Man to cameo in the new She-Ra, but they couldn't because there's some weird rights thing.
Yeah.
Which is so stupid. They're the same universe. Just let them coexist.
That's what happens. That's why we didn't have the X-Men and Marvel for so long.
It's so stupid.
They should just be like Disney and purchase everything.
Yeah, God, don't even get me started on the people who are totally okay with Disney owning everything if they get more of their fucking fandom, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Listen, man, they're going to own my beloved wrestling, or at least WWE soon. I know they are. I know it's going to happen.
Is it just a feeling you have, or is there actually like talks of it?
So they've been selling to different people. They pitched like to Disney, NBC Universal, because they're on USA Network on Monday, to Fox, because they're on Fox on Fridays. Pretty much like they've shopped around to all these different people, and nobody will pay what they're asking. But one of the big players is they're like, oh, it's just going to be like Marvel. They're like, Disney's going to buy the WWE. And I'm like, oh no, I don't want that at all.
I don't want to say, nah, it's not going to happen, because God damn it, it could. It could.
That totally sucks. But, silver lining, I would pay so much money to see people in giant Goofy and Donald Duck and Mickey Mouse outfits just beating the shit out of each other in a cage match.
I want to see Mickey Mouse wearing a leather vest like Stone Cold Steve Austin wore that says 100% whoop ass.
Yes.
And he's just going up to people like at the Disney parks like, Do you want to see Mickey Mouse kick some ass? Give me a hell yeah!
Hell yeah!
Hell yeah!
You're about to get my ass beaten. Oh, yuck.
Oh, fuck. This is going to happen, isn't it?
Probably. But back to He-Man.
But He-Man...
So can we talk about the cliffhanger we're left at the mid-season break? Or like at the end of part.
Because this released... I watched it all at once, but this was released in 2 parts. Episode 5 ends with Skeletor being resurrected after Adam was resurrected, killing... Well, not killing, but stabbing Adam again, and then taking the power... Taking the power for himself and becoming Skelegod, and that's where it just stopped for a while. That's fucking wild.
So, I told you I got back from vacation. I finished part 1 at like 4:00 in the morning because I had to watch this in one sitting the day it came out. And I'm just like laying there in bed. Emily's been asleep for hours at this point, and I'm just laying there. And I had this like intense feeling of satisfaction, but also like I'm like shaking. I'm like, oh God, I have to know what happens right now. I'm not going to make it. Like, I can't wait.
How long do we have to wait till?
It was November, wasn't it? It was from
I think so.
June or July to November. So from summer to wintertime.
It was too long.
It was. Oh my God. Especially it's a good cliffhanger. It's a good setup to where I was already excited. I think kind of regardless of how part 1 had ended, I was going to be excited and going to binge part 2 in one day in one sitting. But the fact that it ended the way it did, I had that like scratching, clawing, needing to know
where's the next hit
right now. Yeah. And I think, I think it set it up for people that already enjoyed part 1 and that weren't like, Tila, I don't like this.
Mm-hmm.
It was the perfect way to make you be clamoring for more. Yeah. Because that's what it did to me.
Part 1, the first 5 episodes was all focused on Tila as the new protagonist and on all these side characters and how they developed in the absence of Prince Adam and He-Man and Skeletor, which was fascinating because we got to see like the heroes and villains, work together to try and save the universe because of Skeletor and He-Man's actions. So
and it gives you a false sense of like hope when they're doing that of like, wow, maybe like they're really going to go all the way to the end, and that's how they'll end this series. It's like, they all work together to bring back, to save the universe. And it's like, nope, not what happened at all.
Yeah, Evil Lynn in particular gets this great, will she turn good? Won't she? She has this fantastic dynamic with Orko.
Yes.
This whole conversation they have about like the nature of magic and the expectations placed upon them.
A relationship I did not expect.
No.
It was wonderful. The whole time you're thinking like, oh, she's slowly becoming good, starting to realize that, like, this whole conflict between Skeletor and He-Man was, at least from Skeletor's end, just this big masculine shit show of being like, oh, I have to be the best in the universe, and it was pointless and everything. And you think she's going to, like, just team up with the good guys, we've saved the universe and everything. And then Skeletor comes back, and immediately she's like, well, I gotta be on the winning side. So she just teams right back up with him. She's definitely like a fascinating antagonist for this series.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one that like I was rooting for, like not because she's banging, but like because
a little bit because she's banging.
A lot of it because she's banging. But again, with everything else, this is like a natural extension of what came before, because in the old cartoon, Skeletor's, just the abusive boss villain, treating everybody like shit. They take it to its natural conclusion here with Evil Lynn. She's like, it flat out goes there and be like, yeah, you're in an abusive relationship, kind of Joker and Harley Quinn-esque. Ironic because Mark Hamill voices them both. Even though she's...
I hadn't thought about that.
Even though she's like selfish and her name is Evil Lynn, so she has evil of her own.
She added the evil.
Yeah, you still want her to, to make that step toward the light, to realize that the world of darkness isn't the only place where she belongs, if she belongs in it at all.
Her tragic backstory isn't anything revolutionary, but it does the work that it needs to establish, like, she's evil because of the way the world has treated her, of like all of the hardship she's faced, And specifically with Skeletor of like, you know, she feels the need to be on the winning side, and she thought Skeletor was the winning side until she realized that, like, there's no winning in his end game. Like, even when he gets the power, when he becomes the strongest in the master of the universe, his whole deal is just beating He-Man, and she's like, there's nothing else here. Like, that's all there's going to be.
Yeah.
I can't attach myself to someone whose only ambition is to beat up he's more in love with He-Man than me.
Man.
Just like how the Joker's more in love with Batman than Harley Quinn. Just like, it's a very good comparison.
She's a nihilist, man.
Yeah, she really is. She has a full-on existential crisis when she learns that God is dead. She's like, she goes full Nietzsche, and then she's like, well, there's no moral authority anymore. Guess I'll take out the universe. I'll destroy heaven and destroy the universe.
And I guess that's why I relate to her so much, because these past 2
You
years...
want to destroy
really,
heaven and the universe?
No, but I relate to the aspect of like, oh man, this shit is fucking pointless. You know? Better just eke out an avenue for myself to exist in until it all goes kablooey.
As someone who's... Go ahead.
The entire time I was watching that, I was staring at Evelyn. I was just like, man, she reminds me so much of Tyler in every single way.
Aw, I'm sure you did, and that's not a joke at all.
As someone who's fallen out of faith, I certainly can understand this period of like loss of purpose. This moment where it's like, if the power itself that I thought was in control of everything isn't, if there's no guiding force directing all of our actions, if there is no ultimate good or evil or whatever, what's the point of it all? That's basically anybody who has fallen out of faith's like crisis that they have. For a show that's about selling toys to children to tackle such like a heavy adult theme, that's very impressive. Like, I felt for Evelyn. I felt like connected with her there, where it was like, yeah, this crisis of faith, where it's like, where do we find purpose when there's no one to give it to us anymore?
Yeah, and amid all like the bombast and like the funny jokes and the quips, there's a lot of existential shit happening, and especially in the second half with Evelyn and Teela. Teela's whole spiritual journey of like actualization is like pretty intense stuff, because she goes through some shit. She goes through some heavy shit.
She does, and I have some conflicting feelings on hers, because hers kind of ends up being the power of friendship and love overpowers anything else.
Yeah.
Very, very I mean, like, it functions for a series like He-Man, but there are some more nuanced elements to it. Like, it's not just, oh, love conquers all. It has more of a message of, we can't strive for a greater good. Because her whole thing is that she has to accept that she's going to become the next sorceress, where she was the sorceress's daughter. The one who, like, basically possesses or guides the power to whoever the champion is. And her journey is realizing that the original sorceress's idea of the power, this responsibility means that we have to sort of detach ourselves from the world. We have to put the greater good above all else. Teela comes to the realization that doesn't work, because when you put the greater good above all else, you're forgetting what good is. Good is the connections that we have with others. Good is the love that we have for each other. Like, if you lose those connections, then you've lost sight of what you're doing this for in the first place.
Straight up cried during that part.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's
I mean,
beautiful, because we see that she's breaking the mold, and she's showing it can be done a different way, because she draws her power from having her friends and her family and the people that she loves around her. And not everyone is like that, because, you know, for so long, the previous sorceresses have been isolated and hidden away, and that's how they kept their power. If she was going to be like that, she would have no power, because that's not where she draws it from, because she needs to be around the people that she loves and that love her. And I think I agree with what you said. You know, it's not just like a love conquers all kind of generic, like, oh, love conquers all. Everything's good. I think it's a lot more deeper than that, because I think people can look and reflect in their own life of, I think a lot of people don't realize they get a lot of positive energy from the people they enjoy being around. that it's, and that's where they get not their power in a traditional sense like this, but just, they're kind of like will to keep going day to day. And a lot of the good things in their life they get from the people that they love and the people that, they care about. So I thought, it was a beautiful metaphor. I thought it was played out really well. And yeah, straight up tears.
Yep. Agree with both of you. And so much of this new series is about the breaking of cycles. Tila breaking the cycle of the power and what responsibility comes with that and being the sorceress. Evelyn breaking the cycle of abuse with Skeletor. He-Man breaking the cycle of the back and forth that him and Skeletor have had this whole time.
I love that bit.
I love it. Yeah, I love it when he, Skeletor is just, all up in his shit, I'm gonna defeat you once and for all, He-Man! And He-Man's just fucking sick of it. He's like, this is not about us.
And he tosses him into the fucking sun. Oh, it was such a good moment. And it fits with this so well because this series isn't about them. It is about Tila. They do become secondary characters to Tila and Evelyn. This is very much the story of Tila and Evelyn. And, I understand why people going in would be against that. This is supposed to be a He-Man series. I get it. But, if you actually look at the story for what it is, it's this very potent story about questioning what the struggle between good and evil is. With Tila, it's realizing that it's not just some generic idea of good that we need to uphold. It's good comes from the bonds that we share, from the love that we have for one another. That's what good is. If you forget that, you lose sight of what you're fighting for in the first place. With Evelyn, the evil that she becomes is not this mindless cartoonish evil of Skeletor wanting to beat He-Man because that's just how it has to be. Her evil is that, she gives in to this depressive nihilism of there's no point to everything, so I'm just gonna end it all for myself and everyone else. She goes full nihilist and decides, if there's no point for me, there's no point for anyone. It challenges these traditional notions of good versus evil.
I think kind of going back to what I said earlier about how growing up, I thought the power was this good force innately. I think the end of this series really shows the distinction too of good is its own thing. Good is its own force, and it's not something that comes from one source. It comes from the people around you and the people in your environment. And the power is just what makes the world go round and is not good nor evil. So I think the whole sorceress thing kind of shows that distinction even more of good comes from your surroundings.
Agreed. I guess we can kind of just get into, if you guys don't have anything else to add at the moment, I don't know how aware of the huge backlash you were, Isaac, but Rollin and I were intimately familiar with it.
I sat down to watch this series. I literally texted Tyler, is it this one or this one? Because there's two on Netflix now, and he's like, it's this one. And I was like, okay. So I sat down, I watched it, I was like, that was pretty good. I really enjoyed that. Let's get some stuff together for the pod. And I was like, oh no.
Literal dumpster fire. Because I don't follow that many Reddit threads, but I follow a Masters of the Universe action figure collecting subreddit. Mm-hmm. And oh my God, those people were unbearable.
It's pathetic and it's disgusting. Because we're at the point now where these people, and you know what kind of people we're talking about, the people who rail against, misogynist, racists, all those that have to pick a fight with literally everything that comes out now if it doesn't focus on a straight white dude. I can understand initial disappointment if you're just a fan. It's oh man, cool, a new He-Man show. I can't wait to see some more He-Man. That'd be cool. I love that shit as a kid. And then maybe being a little disappointed, they killed him and he's not around a lot. And that's kind of a bummer. I just want to see He-Man. But it never just ends at that. It becomes insane hyperbole. Yeah, they ruined it. This is an insult. They don't understand.
They modernized Tila's haircut. I'm not watching this shit.
They hate the fans. They're not real fans. Woke SJW garbage.
Kevin Smith did a quick cash grab. He doesn't care about this universe.
How dare he put a message and themes and characterization into this series about two buff guys hitting each other?
And he said it in an interview because the backlash was insanely intense when the first part of this dropped. Like, it was, you would think the world ended.
He was open that this was not a franchise that he
initially was a fan of. He became a fan of it later in life.
Yes, he did not have the personal attachment to it, when he was younger.
Yeah.
Which, considering his age, I would think that would make sense because he would have been a little too old for it.
A little too old for it at the time, yeah. A teenager a tween teenager by the time it hit.
Right. He wouldn't have been the target audience at all.
People viciously went after him when the first part of this dropped. Like, he lied to us. He said this would be all about He-Man, and they just made it the Tila show. He's a fucking hack. He's disgusting. He ruined. And I'm just like, holy fuck! Like, you guys are acting like this over a 40-year-old cartoon based off a toy line.
Yeah.
Like, get a fucking grip.
Yeah.
Just get a goddamn grip. Like, and maybe, just maybe, wait for the second part to see how it all ties together.
If you guys want to complain about something, you can go, Star Wars Twitter is over there. You can go over there.
Yeah, like everybody and their mother complains about Star Wars Online. Just stick with that because we're used to that.
Yeah.
Shit like this just makes me want to completely disengage from fandom in general and just enjoy everything in a vacuum. Because
works for me.
And because I don't want to paint the picture that there's no positivity in fandoms anymore, because there is.
We had our toxic fandom episode.
Yeah, I know, but the problem is that these people are always the loudest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
they're the ones that swarm the fastest and swarm the loudest and just don't let shit go and make it so you can't just be in a space to enjoy something.
And the thing is,
and it blows my mind.
It's not even just entertainment like this. It creeps into sports, and it just creeps into anything, anything you can be a fan, into music. Like, it's not just animation or film or television. Anything that you enjoy, a toxic fandom is out there. And like you guys said, it's this super loud online presence where you read it and you're just like, oh, why? Like, this makes me just cringe and not want to be like, oh yeah, I love insert whatever thing you enjoy here.
I talked about this in our toxic fandom episode, but the way that I cope with it is to avoid looking at criticism, at actual discussion and whatnot, and to look for creatives within the fandom, because the creatives in the fandom are almost universally positive. Like, the people who are out there making fan fiction, fan art, those sort of things, those people devote all this time and energy into these things because they love them. So if you look at that aspect of fandom, you're going to see these fans who are just inspired by these different series and whatnot, and show all of this love and appreciation for them by expanding on the lore and the story and the characters and creating new images and stories to look into and everything. That's where I find most of the positivity within fandom. Or cosplayers, people who take on the images of these characters and perform them. If you're looking specifically at online discussion, you're always gonna find more hatred there, because it's easier to hate through discussion than it is to actually take the time and create something that expresses your hatred more openly.
That's very true, and that's a good point about finding a different avenue in fandom spaces aside from discussion. But what sucks for me is that the discussion aspect of fandom is my bread and butter, because I'm trying to make a living with analysis.
Yeah. I mean, we literally have a podcast we're doing right now where we critique things, and I know that it's kind of bullshit to be like, critics fucking suck, and be doing this.
When we're acting as a critic, but,
right. But
they do fucking suck. As much as I love talking about my opinions online, who gives a shit about my opinion? My opinion is just another fucking opinion, I don't know. I mean, I do know, but because of the internet and unlimited access to spewing your bullshit online at the click of a finger, how people internalize their own opinions as fact and putting their own opinions on a pedestal to such a degree where they become just entitled, smug pieces of shit about it. It's a psychology I can't fathom. I hate plenty of things. But I don't give a shit because I hate it. Why would I want to waste my time bitching about it endlessly?
I honestly think the same parts of the brain that are active in religion are active in fandom, because it's the same sort of bullshit. It's like you get this own idea of how your headcanon works, and if anybody disagrees with you or if you come across anything that undermines it, you get irrationally angry. Like, I think...
Yeah, the fact that they make it a linchpin of their identity to such a degree, it's like, it's troubling, because it's like, it's easy to be snarky about it and like, oh, go outside, touch grass, breathe some air. But it's like, if you can separate your annoyance from it for a second and just like, man, these people, like, I think a lot of them need genuine help.
Oh, absolutely.
You know? Like they need genuine psychological help. You know?
Yeah.
I think it's a lot easier to go online and say something negative you're feeling in whatever the Twitter character limit is than to like really explain why you think, like why you love something. Because I mean, it's like I was talking earlier. It's a lot easier if I'm, cause I'm a huge pro wrestling fan. If I watch some match and I'm just like, that was garbage. It's really easy for me to go on Twitter and just be like, that match between so-and-so and so-and-so was one of the worst pieces of shit I've ever seen. Whereas if the opposite, if I saw something just absolutely amazing, the storytelling and the athletics were impressive, it's a lot harder for me to like put into words like, wow, that was really incredible. So yeah, it's a lot easier.
Yeah, because you're satisfied with it and you just want to enjoy the satisfaction, without spewing an opinion on Twitter,
But there's it's so easy to go on Twitter and just be like, Gremlins sucks. It's the worst movie I've ever seen, because you want that, you want other people in a community to jump in and be like, I agree. Fuck Gremlins. That movie sucked. And you want to get likes and just,
you want the validation.
Yeah. Exactly. You want to know that your opinion is valid. Yeah. 100%. Like, people want to be validated through Twitter or any social media, but I feel like Twitter's the worst dumpster fire for it.
Yeah.
Now,
and like, I can't.
We did do a 2-hour review of Twilight where we just shit on that for a while, so I do have to
We did, but like, we were constructive about it, and we made a point. We made a point multiple times to say, like, we're not trying to shit on anybody who is a fan.
That's true.
We respect your fandom of Twilight. So there's definitely a difference,
Mm-hmm.
I can't act like I'm above, like, enjoying validation for my opinions on pop culture, because nobody is if that's their bread and butter.
Mm-hmm.
But I do not feel the desire. It's just not in me to be. If I'm disappointed in a new movie I was excited for, like, my first thought is not to jump on Twitter or Reddit or TikTok and be like, that was the worst fucking piece of shit I've ever seen. I can't believe they destroyed this and that. Like, bleh. Like, that's just not. I'll just be like, oh, that sucked. I'm disappointed. Fuck.
This idea
and then I get over it.
Yeah, this idea of ruining your childhood is like, it's such bullshit. Is your nostalgia so fragile that it's going to shatter if somebody makes a new thing affiliated with what you liked before and you don't like it? I'm not a big fan of The Legend of Korra. I have a lot of problems with that series. I don't think it ruined Avatar in any avenue. You can still, like, the old thing still exists. If you don't like the new thing, just don't watch the new thing and continue to enjoy the old thing. Pretend it's not there.
Yeah, and I mean, I know we're treading over old ground that we did with our toxic fandom thing, but I mean,
this is
it's still
an excellent example of it, is what we're looking at.
It still bears repeating, because when you're a fan of something and you internalize it to the degree of, like, it's a massive part of your identity, like, there's just this ownership that you feel like, this thing is mine. I love it. It makes me feel good, and this is the way it's supposed to be. So when something comes out that challenges that and disappoints you, you feel personally attacked by it, like it's an insult against you and your fandom. The fact that people can't separate that from themselves, like, hey, wait a second, I didn't like it. It's not necessarily made for me. It's maybe made to appeal to a new generation of fans. Oh, well, like, the fact that so many people can't do that and connect those dots.
And it is hard. I'm not going to talk like it's super easy to, like, look at something and be, neutral on it if you don't like it. Because God knows we've talked enough shit about Thor Ragnarok, even though we haven't even gotten to that review yet. we're both still vitriolically angry towards Thor Ragnarok, but like,
it's garbage.
it's bad. We'll get there. That might be our 100th episode. That might be when we finally hit Thor Ragnarok. It's hard to separate those things, but what you have to do is, even if you're going to talk shit on something, even if you're going to get angry about something, you can't use that as, you need to analyze why. And that's the problem, is that there's so many people online who will get angry about things and not reflect on why they're angry. I feel like we've done a good job here of, like, when we're upset with something in a series, or if we don't like something, like, we point out the reasons that we don't like it. But so many people online will just go out there and be like, there's too many women characters in this. It's like, why does that make you angry? Like, why does it make you angry that there's a focus on a female lead here? What is the problem for you there?
To bring it back to He-Man, like, it's not like Tila was some, like, tertiary character that only appeared a little bit in the old one. She, like I said before, she's like the third main character. She's in it pretty much the entire time. Like, and Kevin Smith said, like, against the backlash, he's like, if you're pissed off that, like, there's chicks in this, like, I don't know what the fuck to tell you, because, like, women are all up in the old show all the time, so what the fuck is your problem? Like, you know, grow the fuck up.
It's just silly. Just a bunch of man babies wanting their homoerotic fantasy.
That's really the best way to describe it. Is just, they're just man babies. Like, and seeing man babies throw a fit over a toy line.
40 fucking years ago. You're in your goddamn 40s, like, and 50s. Just get over it. Jesus.
And like, and we collect toys casually. He's collecting Motu toys as we speak. You know, he's trying to really build out his line. Like, you're not the kind of guy.
Stop calling him that. I have to edit this shit and call him T2 or Diet T or whatever we decided to call him.
Diet
T2. T2.
I like Diet T.
Okay, let's start that over.
Okay, T2. You're probably you're the biggest Motu fan of the trio here. Okay, you're actively collecting the new retro toy line.
I am. And there's a couple of the Revelations ones.
And a couple of the Revelations one, which are also bitchin'. There's nothing that this franchise can do to piss you off so much that you're just going to drop collecting the toys, right?
No, absolutely not.
Even if the newest thing comes out and you fucking hate it, like, you still like older parts of it, so it doesn't matter.
Okay, you know? Prime example. So I haven't watched it, so I don't really have, a good grip or opinion on it. I'm talking just from an art style perspective. Have they released this new Masters of the Universe, like the separate one that's
the
targeted
CGI one?
The CGI one, yeah.
Yeah, it's on Netflix now.
Well, I've heard it's decent.
I saw the animation style and I said, that looks terrible. And that was it. I didn't like the animation style. I didn't say they've ruined the way my favorite characters look. Skeletor's one of my favorite characters of all time. They made him look stupid. I'm done with this franchise. There was none of that.
Boys, we need to
stop at I don't like this animation.
Boys, we need to watch Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Tyler, you need to finish that series.
Gotta finish it. Yeah, it's great.
It's great, and people fucking hate it because they saw like a few clips of the art, a few stills of the art, and they were just like, "Oh, this is garbage. I hate this."
I'm not gonna lie, I was in that camp when it first came around.
I'll be honest. The promotional material is the problem. Like, all the promotional material for Rise of the TMNT looks bad, and I don't know how or where they got it, because it doesn't look like the show. It looks like somebody drew the show from memory.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point, because when that first dropped, the character designs and everything, I'm like, that just looks ugly. I don't like it. The designs are stupid. I'll skip it.
But actually,
not my thing. But when you watched it and you told me, like, hey, man, Rise of the TMNT is actually really fucking good. I'm like, all right, I trust his opinion on animation, and, like, started watching it, and, like, it's phenomenal.
It's the best animated of any of the TMNT series.
Yeah, like,
it's a fucking anime. It's like a fucking good anime.
Yeah, still images and, like, promotional images do not do the actual show justice whatsoever.
God damn it. Diet T. That's my recommendation to use. Check out Rise of the TMNT, because it's a really good series.
Speaking of great animation, we should try to find a cut of the Sonic movie where he still has human teeth. And
Oh,
I wish you had been to theater with us, Isaac. So Tyler and I saw Jackass, and they play a Sonic trailer, and like the like still like uneasiness I have when I see animated Sonic, like oh no, I don't want to see his teeth.
You get flashbacks to the old.
Yeah, like I can't. I don't think I can ever enjoy another animated Sonic movie like that because I'm just going to think about his creepy human teeth.
That's a shame because Sonic's a franchise now. Y'all saw where the third movie and the Knuckles series were confirmed?
Yep, they greenlit the third movie already and a Knuckles spinoff.
So fucking happy. We got to do our Sonic review soon too because I love it. Anyway,
I was more tangent when we were seeing Jackass and that trailer's coming on. I was telling T2 like, Isaac, he's going to go as Mario again to see Sonic 2. And then when the Mario movie comes out, he's going to go as Sonic to see that. And T2's just like, God damn it.
And then I was like, and he's going to go to dinner after still dressed as Mario.
Hell yeah. Probably at an Olive Garden again.
Probably at an Olive Garden again.
I hope they still do promotional material in the second movie for Olive Garden.
I just want someone to come up and hand you your check and be like, here's your check.
Oh my God. I was completely zoned out because I was hyper focused on ranting about Sonic, but I'm sure everyone in that restaurant had an experience that night.
It's one of my favorite Isaac stories. Like I think I told you, T2, like he was so high on cloud nine after that first Sonic movie. And like we're in a packed, and I mean packed Olive Garden. And like the entire dinner, he's just rapid firing Sonic lore at us.
I am preaching at the pulpit. I am praying at the altar of Sonic. And like the whole restaurant is getting an earful of it.
Even Richard was like, hey man, like chill.
They bring you a mushroom on a plate, just one mushroom.
And like it didn't strike me right away, but like mid Sonic rant, I'm just like, my God, this man is in an Italian restaurant dressed as Mario. Like, do these people think he's like taking the piss? Like, oh man, what a time before the bad times.
That was the last movie I saw before COVID, and my God, what an experience!
Yeah, we keep joking that like the first Sonic was like the last like big movie before the pandemic really hit, and then as we're slowly easing out of it, Sonic 2 is going to drop, so we don't know what the fuck to expect.
I swear, each Sonic movie is going to be a Horseman of the Apocalypse. The first one was Pestilence, the second one's going to be Famine or some shit. Then there's going to be War, and finally death.
Because of the supply chain crisis. The supply chain crisis and the cost of food going up everywhere. Jesus Christ, Sonic 2 is...
Sonic 2's famine, Sonic 3 is war, and then Sonic... Like, when they finally announced...
It's going to be war because of the Ukraine crisis. Jesus Christ.
Sonic 4 is going to be death. It'll be the last thing anyone sees in a theater before the world ends.
Oh, man. All right, so we can map the decline of Earth by the release of the Sonic series.
They're good movies, though. Very fun, entertaining.
Yeah, the only thing to look forward to, really.
We got wildly off track here. Do we have any final thoughts on...
I mean, that's what makes these podcasts so fun.
I have a pitch. Yeah. I think it would be great. So now that Isaac has seen this and enjoyed it, the three of us should all watch the live action movie from the 80s.
There's a live action.
There's a live action movie. Yep.
It's so bad.
And it's terrible. It's barely anything like the show.
Who plays He-Man?
Dolph Lundgren.
Really?
Yep.
Oh, boy.
And Academy Award-winning actor Frank Langella plays Skeletor.
Oh, my... Oh.
You just want Dolph Lundgren to look at Skeletor and be like, I must break you.
The live-action Master of the Universe movie is disappointing in a way only an 80s adaptation of a cartoon can be disappointing.
Courtney Cox is in it?
Yeah, Courtney Cox is in it.
Like...
In how much they get wrong. It takes place on contemporary Earth in the 80s. There's really no Eternia.
Oh, really? Yeah. They go full Dragon Ball Evolution on it.
Yup. Like, there's a bunch of, like, original characters that are shitty that they introduce. Human characters that just distract from He-Man and Skeletor. And as a time capsule to, like, shitty 80s fantasy, it's fun. Mm-hmm. But if you're looking to it as, like, a decent representation of the He-Man universe, it's wildly disappointing.
So bad.
But
they're finally moving forward with a new live action adaptation. So
interesting.
it's finally coming around. Fingers crossed.
Oh, you know a character we didn't talk much about was Man-at-Arms. I really liked Man-at-Arms.
Good old Duncan. I love Man-at-Arms.
Rules.
He's the
perfect father figure.
Yep, he's the perfect sort of like wizened elder mentor warrior figure.
The world's most dangerous man.
And he rocks a bitchin' stash.
Yep.
Cringer was great too. I was a little annoyed with Cringer at first. I was like, oh, he's just going to be sort of like a Scooby-Doo knockoff where he's always cowardly and everything. But by like the end of the series, he has all these little courageous moments and everything. I'm like, oh, hell yeah, Cringer. Yeah.
It's a really good evolution for him because
Cringer's kind of annoying like Orko is in the old show, to be honest. He's always like, oh, Adam, I don't know if I want to do this. Like he's the Chucky Finster, but not good. Like of He-Man. He's always like, oh, I don't want to do it. And when are we gonna eat again, Adam? I'm hungry. Oh.
He really was just a Scooby-Doo knockoff.
Yeah, like, and Orko was the fucking Scrappy of that.
I hated 80s Orko, but never compare him to Scrappy Doo.
Orko isn't the most annoying 80s cartoon sidekick. That goes to Snarf from Thundercats.
I've never seen Thundercats, so
Thundercats kicks ass. It's He-Man, but with buff cat people.
Isn't there a more modernized Thundercats cartoon as well?
Yes, just like there is with He-Man now. It came out in 2012, and it's awesome. And just like the 2002 version of the He-Man show, it was cut down in its prime before it could finish.
Shame.
Yeah.
Speaking of these 80s cartoons, like as much as I loved the 80s G.I. Joe cartoon, those movies are absolute trash.
Honestly, like a live action?
I honestly enjoy both.
I've seen. Is there only two?
There's a Snake Eye spinoff that I haven't seen and probably won't for a very long time. But
I saw the first two and I've not seen the Snake Eyes movie. And I remember leaving the theater after the first one. I stood up and said out loud, "That was so disappointing." Because I did. I used to. So we had this. It was a movie rental place. It was before Blockbuster came to town. They had all kinds of 80s cartoons for rent. So I saw the G.I. Joe series and I was like, oh, let's give it a shot. And I loved it. I forgot how many episodes you got on one VHS tape, but
it's probably like 5.
Yeah, 4 to 5 probably.
So, I got to see a good amount of episodes because they probably had 7 or 8 VHSs of these different 80s cartoons.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not saying I was like the biggest fan in the world, but I really enjoyed what I watched growing up, renting that from the little local movie shop. So this movie comes out and I'm like, oh, this is going to be sweet. And then it just wasn't at all. I think
you need to give it a rewatch because it's so goofy and so silly.
I mean, I gave Freddy's Dead a rewatch and it completely changed my opinion of it.
See?
So.
Yeah, exactly. See, and Cobra Commander, who is my second favorite 80s villain, kind of gets done dirty in the first G.I. Joe movie. He's better in the second one.
Yeah.
But the first G.I. Joe movie has a standout action sequence on the highway with a car chase with Snake Eyes. It fucking rules. Like, that one action scene is, like, worth the price of admission alone.
Oh,
so
fuck. But before we leave off on this, we really didn't talk too much about the actual action in this series. Like, we praised the animation a bit, but, like, we didn't talk about many of the action sequences in this series.
It slays.
The fucking, hulked out He-Man fight between him and Skeletor is phenomenal. Because He-Man is just, this raging beast at the time, but, Skeletor has the power, and instead of facing off, fist to fist, he's throwing all this weird magic at him, big bolts of, purple fire, raising the undead, teleporting around, and he's just throwing everything he can at this hulked out monster of a He-Man. It's such a cool, inventive fight.
And he's still not able to defeat him, even though he has the power. He's still not able to defeat He-Man.
The finale has all this crazy shit where, Adam and Skeletor face off against Evil Lyn without the power, and are basically just trying to distract her until Tila can, become the next sorceress, go through the ritual and everything. The forces of hell show up and face off against all of Eternia. Orko comes back from the dead and becomes a full-on wizard. There's so much cool action sequences in this.
Yeah, and
the trailer for season 2, where it was like, it's like, or not season 2, but part 2, they had this long epic trailer where it was just like one huge epic fight scene. Like that was pretty much the entire trailer. And I remember watching that and being like, that was really kick ass. But also I feel like they've just given away the entire, plot of part 2.
That's the last episode.
And but they still managed to save some surprises. And speaking of just the action and the style of it, it's really cool to see like a Western cartoon with like consistent high quality action animation. It was really fun to just see like a bombastic action cartoon again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I know like Invincible had some pretty crazy and insanely violent action, but the animation quality itself kind of ebbed and flowed, dipped a little here and there.
Yeah.
But there really wasn't anything I noticed in Revelation that was like that. It was like consistent across the board.
Powerhouse Animation Studios has a great handle on this more mature sort of action where things feel like they have weight. Every hit has a weight behind it, and the motion is like it's a little over the top, like with the way anime is, but it doesn't ever get to the point where it's like I don't feel like we're completely beyond the realm of possibility. Every hit feels like it has power behind it, but not to the point where it's like, oh man, we're just full on going One Punch Man splattering people against the wall,
Yeah, and if nothing else, like if you just want like a fun, vibrant, like balls out kind of like action cartoon, watch this.
Yep.
Final thoughts before we jump into review.
Oh yeah, review. Final thoughts. I'll let T2 go with final thoughts first.
Okay. Final thoughts on this. I think Kevin Smith took one of my favorite franchises of all time and modernized it in an almost perfect way. He found a good balance of adults who grew up with this series can show it to their children and their children would enjoy it, but it's also adult enough to where the adults don't feel like it's dumbed down. I think it's an almost perfect modernization of the He-Man franchise. And also it came out at a perfect time because they just released the toy line and I really got into collecting it. So a lot of things fell into place for me. It was my favorite thing, my favorite piece of media I watched all of last year.
That's awesome.
Wow.
High praise.
Cool. I want to just reiterate what T2 said about it being a near perfect continuation. We are in the age of like the reboot and the requel and the long-awaited sequel. As many of them as there are, I think this one is in the top tier of striking the right balance of, it's not too meta, it's not too cute, it's not like overly grimdark. It understands the original source material in a way where it doesn't try to like undercut it. It doesn't try to be like, this, you thought you knew Masters of the Universe? Well, you don't know anything. And like, it's a love letter to He-Man in a way that's not too cutesy, that really tries to say something deeper about it. That's what I appreciated most about it.
I didn't know anything about He-Man or the Masters of the Universe going into this. I really enjoyed this series, and if this is the only piece of He-Man media I ever consume, I will have high praise for this franchise. I don't know what else. I don't know how it stacks up to the old stuff because I haven't watched it. I have watched She-Ra, and I liked the new She-Ra reboot. But in terms of, like, for me as a newcomer, this is what He-Man is. It's very good. Let's jump into review. I want you all to guess the critic score and the audience score from Rotten Tomatoes.
I'm actually aware of this. I know the critics loved both parts, and I know that the audience review bombed the fuck out of it. So I think both parts are in the 90s as far as critics, and like really fucking like low, like in the 30s for audience.
Yeah, averaged together, it's a 92% critic score and a 40% audience score.
Redonkulous.
Yep.
Yeah.
Redonkulous.
There were lots of reviews that were very repetitive. A lot of them said that it wasn't true to the source material because it was like too dark or adult, or it ignored the lore, or it changed characters' personalities or whatever. lots of ones that hated the shift to focus onto Tila and Eva Lynn over He-Man and Skeletor, and I went through them to see if there was any nuggets of value in their criticisms. Pretty much all of them were just sexist bullshit. It was pretty much misogyny all the way down. I have found some that have a little more to their criticisms, and we're just going to see what they got. First one's from Slid V. Slid says, yes, this show is called Masters of the Universe and not the He-Man show, but let's face it, most of us wanted to see He-Man in action. And for at least a little more than, 5 minutes in the show, yeah, Tila is cool. I'm a big fan of Tila, but it would have been really nice to see them both in action for the majority of the show, in my opinion. 2 out of 5 stars. Now, they were specifically talking about the first part of this.
Mm-hmm.
I get this criticism. It is a show that was originally based around He-Man as protagonist, and switching protagonists, that's going to piss some people off.
Yeah, on the surface of it, I understand it. Because the pacing moves so fast,
mm-hmm.
I can see how people can be turned off by, like, how quickly He-Man and Skeletor are killed off. And I could see people seeing that as, like, a cynical move of just, like, trying to, like, stir the pot just to stir the pot.
Mm-hmm.
But, if you're making that criticism in good faith and aren't just angry that woman take place of man, I respect it. But I think the show over the 10 episodes does enough to justify that curveball they throw at you in the beginning
mm-hmm.
to make up for it if you're jarred by it.
I understand the criticism of people that grew up with this, and they're upset that He-Man isn't in it for longer because, that's a character they grew up watching and they loved. But I agree that if it's a little deeper and that's kind of your complaint of why you didn't really care for it, and it's not just like, yeah, I don't want to watch Tila bad, then I think there's validity in that.
I can see somebody getting hung up on, I was a fan of the old show. I'm a fan of He-Man as a character, and the fact that he's not here means I'm not interested anymore. Every person is going to have a character that they're connected to, and a lot of the time it's going to be the protagonist. And if you remove them from a series, then, you're going to have a lot of fans who are angry about that, and it's not going to be, the series might not be for them. Certainly, with a lot of people, it was a misogynist thing where they just didn't want a woman being the lead. But I think in this one in particular, it was just a case of, I wanted more He-Man. This show didn't have enough He-Man for me. And yeah, I can see that criticism. Part 1 especially, he's really only in the first and last episodes.
Yeah, and the sad thing is that because the shitty aspect is so loud, it drowns out the people who genuinely just it disappointed me. And because that shitty aspect is so loud, it's kind of hard to take those people in good faith, that are just it just wasn't what I wanted or expected. For me, at least, it's kind of hard for me to sit back and be like, oh yeah, sure. You're just another, yeah, another asshole annoyed that a woman or a minority character was focused on over the dude.
Right. I'm gonna give some Skid a little bit of benefit of the doubt here because they don't mention anything
I'll give
in the
him
review.
benefit of the doubt too. Yeah. Same.
Next review is from Mike S. Mike says, well, it definitely was a revelation. Why did you do this, Kevin? Skeletor getting boned was horrible. This was a kids' TV show. Everyone involved in this should retire from the entertainment business for good. Just awful. 0.5 out of 5 stars.
First of all, Mike S., we don't see Skeletor getting boned. We just see the implication of Skeletor getting boned.
And they do talk about going to bed.
Yeah, but we don't see it. Unfortunately.
What I was talking about earlier is that I have no connection to the old series, but I was shocked at how far this series was willing to go. And I can understand somebody being upset because, I thought this was a show for kids. This show doesn't feel like it was made for anybody under 25.
Yeah, if you didn't read up on it beforehand and it was oh man, I used to love this, and it's supposed to be a continuation. I got kids. I'd love to show this to them, and it's maybe a bit more violent and suggestive than you would have assumed. I could see being upset about that. But my sympathy only goes so far because we're in 2022. 22 now.
22. We're in 22.
We're in 22. We're in year 22.
We started right back over.
If you want to watch something with your kids, I don't care if it's animated or not, like, information about its content is 2 seconds away for you to confirm.
Yeah.
Like, there's no excuse anymore. Like, I'm telling you how to parent. Yes. As a fatherless person, I am telling... Fatherless? Wow, Freudian slip there. As a child-free man, I am telling you how to parent.
Birth. Oh, boy.
Look this shit up before you show your kids and get offended on their behalf. Please.
This guy's a fucking idiot. Like
me or the critic?
The critic. Like what? That's just so stupid. Like, and that's the same thing. Like, you know, when you used to go rent a movie or rent video games, like, you know, your parents kind of knew, but if they didn't know, they would look at the back of the case and be like, "Oh, this is rated R. Well, you're not going to get that." Well, today we have the internet. So before this ever comes out, you're going to see a bunch of stuff where you can read about the content details. And like, it's like, I don't want to show little Johnny the alleged boning. So we're not going to do that.
I will say, I do think this should have gotten a higher rating than TVPG though. Like, I will give it that. I could see somebody coming across this on Netflix being like, "Oh man, I love T-Man. Hey, gather around kids." And then pressing play and then being like, "Oh fuck." Like, this is not what I thought it would be. I'll give them that. Like
these Skeletor hanging dong or something.
No.
Though, you know, like,
it's not Game of Thrones with He-Man. It's
that's what I'm trying to say. Yeah, like it's, you know.
Now, what I'll say is that from more of a thematic standpoint, I can understand maybe somebody being a little not disappointed but surprised at this series because it hits on a lot of headier, more adult themes like nihilism and the loss of faith and hope. Like, it does tackle some dark, heavy themes that maybe the original doesn't, and maybe they were expecting more of a light romp.
Yeah.
I can see that criticism more, but this seems to be much more of like a moral outrage review.
Yeah, and it's just more hyperbolic nonsense of like, nobody who worked on this should work again. It's like, I'm so sick of this. Mm-hmm. I'm so sick of this bullshit. Just say why you didn't like it and leave it at that.
And you know this guy's going to sit in the theater the night Clerks 3 comes out, and he's just going to be, he's going to have something stupid to say about that too.
Yeah, that's the funny thing. Like all these people that get so over the top with like this vitriolic hatred, they're going to be the first fucking asses to sit down and watch the shit they've been bitching about for so long. You know,
I told you guys when I worked at the movie theater that like I had somebody come out of Incredibles 2 and demand a refund because they had said 2 swear words in the movie.
They said like 2 swear words in the first one.
I know. They were like, I thought this was going to be a good, wholesome movie, but they've said ass or something, or damn.
It wasn't even ass. I think they say like hell and damn, and that's it. Like, and can you really call hell a curse word? You know, like maybe in certain contexts, but it's a place. You know, can a place be a curse word?
Mm-hmm. Next review. This one pisses me off. This one's from Jamie M. Jamie says, "For Masters of the Universe to work, you can't probe too deep. You got men who are half skunk or half bee or half lobster. You got talking tigers and a man who busts through walls with his helmet head and springy legs. So you can't Game of Thronesify the series by making it too serious. You can't explore characters' sexuality much or have a scene with French kissing someone with a skull for a head. You probably should avoid anchoring the story on weighty topics such as nihilism, cults, logistics of the afterlife. You do need a distant story, though, and I do like shows to make sense and not leave me wondering what the point of the episode even was. 2 out of 5 stars.
Yeah, the whole, this is just a silly cartoon, so it shouldn't make me think.
This person's saying animated shows at all shouldn't take on serious topics ever. Well, like, has this person ever seen anything like it's an easy, I guess, example, like BoJack Horseman or even fucking King of the Hill, things that tackled some serious topics throughout the course of it. I tried to go on the spectrum of like, very serious to like not so serious, and but still, even
with like animation targeted towards children, I hate this argument that you can't have a series, a movie, whatever, that cannot be both absurdly silly and fun and tackle heavier themes. I think that argument died with Adventure Time. Like, Adventure Time proved that you can have a stupid, silly show that lots of people enjoy for its stupid, campy cartoonishness that also tackles super heavy themes of depression and death and, like, all these crazy different ideas that, like, adults can get connected to. And, like, multiple series have done that since. Series like Steven Universe. A more recent one is, like, Centaur World. Like, I've watched the first season of that, and that series gets super fucking dark while also being just this, like, almost obnoxiously silly and campy cartoonish show. If you can balance these two elements of campy, lighthearted fun and, like, serious, dark, heavy topics, you've got a masterpiece on your hands. It's not that you can't do it, it's that doing it is difficult, but pulling it off is amazing.
Also, have you guys ever seen a Pixar movie? That's kind of their thing. Like,
or a Studio Ghibli movie, you know? Like, I don't get this idea. Like, there's still this bias against animation, specifically in the West and America, where, like, people just assume because it's animated, it has to be, like, second tier, it has to be thinly drawn, it has to be simple and dumb and fluff. Like, it's insulting, to children as an audience because kids aren't as stupid as you think they are with the content that they watch. There's, like, just this general idea that if it's animated, it's shallow. And there's also this other caveat to it where it's like, if it's about something fantastical or otherworldly or something inherently kind of silly, then it can't be serious because I can't take it seriously because it has a silly premise. Like, there's, like, this weird binary with that kind of thinking. Like, if I'm going to take a story seriously, it has to take place in a serious place with a serious tone, and
it's going to be edgy.
Like, if it's going to be a fantasy, it has to be dumb and silly. And it's like, no, like, why are you restricting storytelling in that way? You know?
Exactly.
Like, just because this is a story about a barbarian guy with a powerful sword and a guy who can run through walls with his head, it doesn't mean it can't say important things, you know? Mm-hmm. That's the magic of storytelling, is it could be a bunch of things at once.
Yeah.
I'm going to read this review from Pedro F, and I want you all to guess what score he gave it at the end.
Pedro F?
Pedro F. This is from Pedro. If you enjoy Hulk, X-Men plots, and Dragon Ball fights all merged with a Star Wars environment, this will be your series. What score do you think Pedro gave that?
Sounds like it would be a high score.
I'm thinking it's a low score because I don't think the review's done. I think he's going to insult all of that in the second paragraph.
No, that's the full review. Right? That's the full. No, that's the whole review.
It sounds positive, but I'm going negative.
It was 0.5 out of 5 stars.
What the actual? Oh my!
I guess this person is implying. Yeah.
If you pitch to me, it's like Hulk, X-Men, and Dragon Ball in a Star Wars setting, I'm gonna come. Like, that sounds perfect. I don't know what the fuck your problem is. Why is this all negative, Pedro?
I don't know. Are they implying that all of that is, like, shit and pap and, like, nonsense? Or are they implying that because it's a mix of all these things, it's not good?
Two of the most identifiable comic series in the West, the most identifiable anime series, and the most marketable sci-fi series. All of those are total garbage. It's just like, get over yourself. If you like super popular things, you'll like this.
You like popular things? Philistine.
Good lord. Here's one of the fun ones that I have to put a voice to. It's from Matthew C. Matthew says, serious question. If you hate He-Man, why make a new He-Man show? Do the showrunners sustain themselves on the tears of fans, on their shattered hopes? They have turned our dreams into nightmares and our joy into ash. They say that evil cannot create anything new, that it can only corrupt and ruin what good forces have invented or made. Given the ruination wrought by this new He-Man, a truly evil force must have been at work indeed. 0.5 out of 5 stars.
See, this is what I'm talking about right here. Like, when you internalize your fandom to the point where you actually think, without irony, that the people who spent how long making it
And how much money?
actively hate it? You're fucking insane. Why would people waste their professional and creative time writing, animating, voicing, and promoting content that they hate?
It's like, we can make so much money on this, but I have a better idea. Let's ruin this for all of these fans. That makes way more sense.
These people are so myopic and so insecure in their fandom that they unironically take this shit as an insult, as a personal insult, like it's an attack on them when they don't like something. No, you just didn't like it, and that's okay.
Matthew's talking.
It's not personal.
Matthew's talking here
personal.
Matthew's talking like he just witnessed 9/11. Like,
I know. That's what I'm talking about how fucking hyperbolic these people are and how insane they are.
Oh my God.
We've been talking about our running joke about how much we hate Thor Ragnarok. Like, I just think it's a shitty movie. I don't think it ruined the MCU. I don't think it was made to spite us as fans. It's just a shitty movie, and it's okay.
I don't think the other Thor movies, so there wasn't a lot that ruined for me. But,
Oh boy.
Do you think these people ever have like moments of
self-awareness?
Like, I just spent hours online bitching about He-Man or bitching about the new Ninja Turtles or Star Wars, and I fapped off in between negative comments. Like, what is my life? Do you think they ever have like moments of clarity, post-nut clarity with like how much they hate this shit? You know, like, goddamn,
the fucking edge in that one.
Yeah, and like they have this like purple prose with their criticisms, like the ruination of He-Man. Mm-hmm. The ruination of He-Man. He-Man was made to sell you shit. Like, it's just commercialism. It's trying to sell you plastic, for God's sakes.
It's a great segue into our last review. This one, and I'm sure I'm getting this name wrong. It's from K-Tai Y. K-Tai says, all the negative fan reviews are almost exclusively from 40-plus-year-old man-children that are mad that the show had the audacity to focus on characters other than He-Man. This is a continuation of an 80s cartoon that was made to sell toys and was objectively lacking in decent storytelling, lore, and character development. That anyone is mad that the show chose to actually develop the characters and lore with a focus on something other than toy production is ridiculous. I don't know what the man-children that hate the show were expecting. Perhaps a mindless and pointless show about two buff action figures fighting for some vague reasons would have been more to their liking. They managed to tell a solid and relatively interesting story while developing what were previously two-dimensional toys into characters that actually have backstories and motivations. If you're foolish enough to want or expect this show to be focused entirely on He-Man being powerful and fighting goofy action figures the entire show, you're a fool and you're gonna be disappointed. Yes, the show is a bit heavy-handed in its messaging and themes, but the fact that the show has themes and a message at all, considering its origin, is something that should be praised, even if it isn't the deepest storytelling you've ever heard. Bottom line, this is a serious and ultimately successful attempt to turn what was frankly a mindless kids cartoon from almost 40 years ago into a cartoon that actually has more going for it than the sale of cool-looking action figures. Anyone that can't enjoy the show for what it is, which is a fun character-focused action cartoon about buff heroes and villains, is too blinded by their own nostalgia to appreciate what is an entertaining and well-animated cartoon based on a series made to sell goofy toys. 4 out of 5 stars.
Yeah, pretty much perfectly stated. And they're a little overly dismissive of the 80s cartoon, but I mean, that's fine because they're making a very valid, needed point.
Other than that, I really agree.
Yeah, the 80s cartoon is definitely a product of its time. The animation is stilted and silly. It's formulaic as shit.
And it was made to sell toys.
And it was made to sell toys, but there is creativity in it. There's a lot of charm. That's why it still stands the test of time, like with people. It's because there's so much charm to it. There's so much personality to it. It's so fun and so campy and so silly.
Mm-hmm.
Nuanced, it is not. Lore heavy, it isn't. There is lore, but it's not lore heavy. There's no real continuity.
Right.
because it's a product of its time. And this review also touched on something that I wanted to mention. All these people exclusively just wanting to be about He-Man beating up bad guys. Like, are you really, I'm going to gatekeep, are you really a fan of He-Man if you think that's what the old show was about? Because it's not. It's all about teamwork. He-Man always had help. You know, he always had help from Orko and Man-at-Arms and Teela and She-Ra. Like, it was never about He-Man just kicking ass. That's not what it was ever about. And so if you expected that from this, what show do you remember exactly?
I agree. The older show did have a little more substance than what this guy let on. He kind of made it sound like it was really just, mindless garbage that was kind of pointless. And I definitely disagree. And I think there was more character development in the 80s show than this guy lets on. Like, he's not wrong with most of the other things that he said. Like, if you went into that kind of expecting that same kind of like the animation equivalent of like hitting your action figures together and just being like, Skeletor evil, you were really expecting the wrong show.
Yeah, it's almost like, it's like these, it all goes back to headcanon. They're comparing it to the memory of what it is instead of actually what it is. They grew up, but they don't expect the show to grow up.
Right.
Like, they don't understand that the new thing isn't going to make them feel like it did 30 years ago. Because you grew up. It can't make you feel that way.
Things change.
Like, you grew up. You become an adult. Your tastes change. You become more jaded and worn down by life. So,
you really related to Evil Lynn in this series, didn't you?
You're not going to feel like an 8-year-old in your underwear watching Saturday morning cartoons anymore because you're a fundamentally different person, Yeah.
Let's do some recommendations.
Let's go with T2. T2, we do a recommendation segment after every pod. Do you have any recs that you can think of?
Does it have to be related to this?
Not necessarily.
Specifically, but if it's got some themes that kind of connect, that'd be good.
Well, first off, watch Euphoria. The hype is real. I was skeptical. I'm caught up. It's fantastic.
For those wanting to know, Euphoria is it's not new. It came out the first season, a couple years old. It's an HBO program about drug-addled, mentally unstable teenagers. So it's very much not related in a way.
Give the 2000s Masters of the Universe a shot if you never have.
Yes,
a lot of people skip it, and like I said earlier, it's what got me into this world. So
I'll definitely give it a look.
It's all on YouTube.
It's very
sweet.
cool.
Yep, and there's not much. There's only like 42 episodes, I think.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Also, and I guess this isn't really so much a recommendation, it's just like a comment. So I've just started Yu Yu Hakusho for the first time all the way through.
Oh yeah?
And I'm thoroughly enjoying it. I'm still early on in season 1 because I watched it kind of sporadically when I was younger, but I'm finally doing it start to finish, and I'm really, really, really enjoying it so far. So
there's a lot of classic anime I need to go back and watch.
Yeah.
I'm shocked that T2 is becoming a weeb. It's not so long ago that you were telling me, is like, man, like, I can't get into anime. It's just not for me. And like, you're like, I'm watching My Hero Academia now and it slaps. And now you're dropping Yu Yu Hakusho on us?
That's some old school stuff, too. That's like, that might have been pre-Dragon Ball. That's
it is. It came out, in Japan, it came out in 92, I believe.
Oh, well, no, I think in Japan, the Dragon Balls were 80s.
Yeah, late 80s.
Oh. Yeah, that's like a deeper cut.
I gotta sit my ass down and watch Evangelion one day. I don't know.
It's all on Netflix.
I know it is. I don't know which ending to watch because apparently there's like 6 of them. But like,
from what I've heard, you can stick with the baseline anime and then the movie End of Evangelion, and that's all you need.
Okay.
Trying to think if there's anything else that I've watched. Oh, I just finished F is for Family, the entire series. Like, we finally just watched the last season, and I thought it had a satisfying ending. I thought the show, if you grew up, whoever had a father who got angry on a consistent basis, it'd be super relatable.
Just like Prince Adam. There's our connection.
Yeah, there we go.
Prince Adam had father issues, F is for family has father issues. There's the connection.
Tyler wouldn't know. He is a fatherless being.
I'm a fatherless being.
He was a virgin birth, the second coming.
But yeah, number one recommendation, if you've never given the early 2000s Masters a shot, check it out. Highly recommend it.
Cool.
Yes.
Tyler Prime?
Tyler Prime. I could just go off on a watch all these old cartoons. But I won't because that seems obvious. I will recommend the original He-Man and the Masters of the Universe cartoon because, as I just highlighted, there's a reason it's still memed to death because there is a singular charm to it, I think, that makes it stand out from other cartoons of the era. God, my voice. Of the era.
We've been doing this for like 2 hours. It's been a long one.
Yeah. It's just, if you can get past the very cheap and stilted animation, I think you'll have a lot of fun with it because it's so colorful and it's so funny and it has a singular charm to it that I think is makes it stand the test of time. And Skeletor is the greatest animated villain of all time. He's just he's such a bitch. He's so fun and ridiculous. Make your first episode the Christmas special.
Oh God, yeah.
With She-Ra, the Christmas crossover with She-Ra and He-Man. It's oh boy, it is something.
And Alan Oppenheimer really makes that character. Like
there's a reason Skeletor is such an online presence. He's fucking ridiculous.
I've never watched the show, and I know every skeleton talks like this because of that.
You royal boob. Spoo? I don't want any spoo. I don't even know what spoo is.
I'm Ram Man in the 80s cartoon. Duh. That's literally what Ram Man sounds like. He's my least favorite Masters character.
There's an episode of the old Motu where the Skeletor splits off into a bunch of little mini Skeletors.
Uh-huh. And
it's just this comedy of errors with just Skeletor and all these mini Skeletors. It's hilarious. I almost want to say the show is tongue-in-cheek. Like, tongue-in-geek. Because of how silly it gets. Like, I honestly think, like, the creators were kind of like, wink, wink. Even all the way back then. They have to have been.
They had to have been. They were grown adults making a series to sell toys. They had to know that this was stupid and silly and fun.
And I think a good sister series is the sister series, She-Ra, which is just as campy, just as fucking ridiculous, and just as hilarious.
Weirdly enough, I've not seen a ton of it.
Bro, it's funny as fuck.
It's not even on purpose. It's not like, I'm not watching that. I just kind of haven't.
There's a running gag with Hordak. He's such a fucking coward, just like Skeletor is really. Like, Hordak has this thing where, like, when he's got and, like, he's, defeated, he just, like, transforms into a fucking rocket and blasts off. Like, every fucking time. It's like, defeated again! You won't capture me! And then he just warp into a rocket and...
It's literally Team Rocket.
Yeah.
He blasts off again.
Pretty great. I got 2 recommendations. The first one is also animated by Powerhouse, and I talked about it earlier. It's the Castlevania series that's on Netflix. It's created by Warren Ellis, who's the comic writer for Red. He did some Astonishing.
I didn't know that.
Thunderbolt, Iron Man Extremis. He also wrote the video game Dead Space. But yeah, the Castlevania series on Netflix is loosely based on the video game series by Konami. I think it's based loosely on the 3rd game with the main characters. It's got Trevor Belmont, Sypha, and Alucard in it as a sort of our main trio.
Alucard? That's Dracula spelled backwards.
Yeah, it's Dracula's son. The premise is that Dracula's trying to destroy all of humanity after they basically piss him off for the last time. It's much more of a darker, more serious, grim take on this content. And the video games themselves they were spooky and stuff. I don't know too much about the Castlevania series. They were a bit before my time. But it's very sort of Game of Thrones with vampires. And I'm not using that as like an insult, but it's very much like sort of identity and politics, and it's not what you would expect of just, they go in and they kill monsters. It's a lot more of like exploring the sort of nature of man and what makes humans monstrous in times of crisis. Very powerful messages, very good characterization. Trevor and Sypha are a total power couple. I love them. Alucard's a glorious mess. It's a lot of fun, very gruesome violence, a lot more...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, a lot more brutal. I would say even better action and animation than He-Man. It's just Powerhouse at their best with their animation. Really good stuff. So I definitely recommend giving that one a watch. Another action series I would recommend, another animated action series, is Primal. By...
Oh, fuck, yes.
I'm gonna butcher his name. It's Gendy Tartakovsky?
Sounds about right.
About right. He was behind Dexter's Lab, Samurai Jack, the Clone Wars...
The original Clone Wars.
Yeah, the miniseries, Symbionic Titan. I didn't know this, but he also directed the first 3 Hotel Transylvania movies.
Mm-hmm.
But he's an animation titan. He's just fantastic. The series is very much like the style of Samurai Jack. It's set in this prehistoric fantasy where there's dinosaurs and cavemen living together alongside like Ice Age creatures and even these sort of fantasy creatures like giant apes and bats and stuff. There's not any dialogue, but there's so many like heavy emotional scenes and moments and character interactions. It follows this one caveman who loses his family to a T-Rex, and then he befriends another T-Rex that also lost its family. And it's just this beautiful story of trying to survive in this primal, dangerous world. A lot of brutal, heavy action with great animation. There's only 10 episodes so far, but there's another season in development for this year. So I'm really looking forward to the rest of that.
Yeah, Primal fucking rules. Like, I'm kind of jealous that I didn't think of that for my rec.
Yeah, it's so good.
Primal's one of my favorite animated things that has come out in like a decade. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
T2, if you haven't seen it, it's on Prime. Watch it. You will not be disappointed. It
I have
rules.
no idea what you guys are talking about. I've never heard of this before.
It's on Adult Swim.
It slaps so hard.
Good. But yeah, I guess that does it for Rex. We want to rate this thing? Rate Masters of the Universe Revelation?
I will rate Masters of the Universe Revelation 5 He-Man Mans out of 6 Skeletor Bangs Evil Lens.
T?
Is it on a scale of like 1 to 5?
Whatever scale
it
you
can be as
want.
arbitrary or as legitimate as you want.
Yeah.
Okay. I give it 4.75 laughing Skeletors out of 5.
Okay. I'm going to give it 7 out of 8 rock hard abs.
So appropriate.
A man of culture, I see.
Yeah. You all know what I like.
Isaac would be Ram Man if he was in the Motu universe.
Holy shit, he would.
Asshole.
He'd be Ram Man meets
You just
Orko.
said you hate this character.
I don't hate Ram Man. I like Ram Man.
Well, but like I can easily see Isaac like running straight through walls though. Like, oh my god, can I somehow animate Ram Man rolling down a hill?
Just put his face over me in that video. I think that's going to do us for tonight, though. Thank you for joining us here at Tug and Geek. And remember, don't throw your baby in the trash.
That's our sign off, by the way. T2. 3 maybe in the trash.
The newest one. Like 7.